Welcome back to the Acting Magic channel. I'm Steve, the Acteer. Today we're talking about the infinite combos in a draft format for Double Masters 2022. But before we get into that, I want to let you know we're sponsored today by MTG On Command. They make these really sweet deck boxes where you get to show off your commander and everyone knows who she is, who she's about, and also you know exactly what's in that deck box. Sometimes I switch things around and I forget. Also, want to let you know that there's a link in the description below. If you have any interest in purchasing them, you'll get 10% off your first purchase. Now, also below, my Patreon. Woohoo! We're doing some really cool stuff over there on Patreon. People are getting some custom proxies of some of the more expensive cards that they can't afford to buy a whole bunch of. And one of them that I did this time around was Demonic Tutor, and I thought that looked really, really cool. Anyway, if you want to support me in that direct and substantial way, I really appreciate it. Now, on to the video. So, you see what happened was, they decided to print a whole lot of powerful cards into Double Masters 2022. Regretfully in some cases. Okay, but let's talk about these infinite combos. Infinite combos in a draft format. So this one's kind of goofy. Follow me here, okay? Body Double and Coiling Oracle both have to be in your graveyard to be able to do this combo. And you also need a Phyrexian Altar. So you need like 4 cards. Okay, it exists. All right, follow with me. There's some actual easier combos to assemble later. But Revelark is going to be in play, and then it's going to be sacrificed for Phyrexian Altar. Targeting Body Double and Coiling Oracle to come back to play whenever Revelark dies. Now, Body Double enters the battlefield as a copy of Revelark, and now we get a Coiling Oracle trigger. That Coiling Oracle trigger is basically going to allow us to draw our entire deck and vomit every land we have in our deck into play because of this combo. It's kind of silly. Now, when Body Double comes back into play as a copy of Revelark, we are going to sacrifice Body Double to Phyrexian Arena and get 1 mana of any color. Whenever it's being sacrificed, the death trigger from Revelark goes onto the stack. Revelark is going to see that Body Double and Coiling Oracle, which we've already sacked Coiling Oracle as well, Body Double and Coiling Oracle are both back in the graveyard with this trigger on the stack. This trigger being on the stack, now we can reanimate Body Double and Coiling Oracle from our Revelark and go infinite. So now we have infinite enter the battlefield, infinite death triggers, infinite, like basically vomit our entire deck into like all the lands into play. And I think Coiling Oracle doesn't even put them into battlefield tap. No, he doesn't. So this is just a really, really funny combo that might happen in a store near you. Next up we have infinite death triggers. We're talking about infinite. Let's keep going. Phyrexian Altar is a classic. It says 3 generic, sack a creature, add 1 mana of any color. Cool. Gravecrawler, 1 black, 2/1. As you may cast Gravecrawler from your graveyard as long as you control a zombie. So you need another zombie for this. But Gravecrawler, you sack him for 1 black, you play him for 1 black. You sack him for 1 black, and blah, 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 blah. So you get infinite cast, infinite enter the battlefield, infinite death triggers from this combo. Now, the payoff. The payoff I suggest, Blood Artist, drains him for 1. Hissing Iguanar, it will shoot something for 1. And then Judith will also shoot something for 1. And they're all in this Double Masters 2022. Just ridiculous a little bit, man. Alright, next up we have infinite attack triggers. What? So Emil the Blessed is going to flicker a creature for 3 generic. It says exile another target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. Aurelia War Leader says whenever she attacks for the first time, each turn untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Now, normally, since Aurelia's already attacked, she can't attack again and get you another combat trigger, right? So in that second combat, she won't be able to attack. But if after that first combat, we flicker her with Emil, now she's a new Aurelia that can go attack because this copy of Aurelia hasn't attacked yet this turn. And she has haste, so hooray! But she also untaps all creatures. So that's how we're going to use Bloom Tender, or any other mana dorks that produce 3 mana, to add mana every time we go attacking. So we'll basically tap Bloom Tender, have her tapped, and then the combat's going to untap Bloom Tender. Aurelia's trigger is going to untap Bloom Tender, and then we're going to get to flicker. Aurelia with Emil every time we do this combo. Pretty great. Infinite combat steps. Next up, we have Infinite counters. Follow with me on this journey. This one's hairy. Okay, so Necrotic Ooze is in play. Mikaeus and Voted Druid both have to be in the graveyard. And then Hardened Scales needs to be on the battlefield. Let's go back to the beginning. Oh, sorry. Necrotic Ooze is going to get the activated abilities of Mikaeus and Devoted Druid. Mikaeus says tap, put a 1 counter on Mikaeus, or tap, remove a 1/1 counter from Mikaeus, put a 1/1 counter on each other creature you control. Okay, so it can get a lot of counters. Every time it taps for a counter, with Hardened Scales in play, it's going to get 2 counters instead. Okay, now, if we look at this, we're going to get both of these basically activated abilities on our Necrotic Ooze. So we can have a tap, add a counter onto our Necrotic Ooze, or -1, or put a -1 counter on our Necrotic Ooze and untap our Necrotic Ooze. Now, we're tapping to put 2 counters on because of Hardened Scales. And then we're removing one, basically removing a 1/1 counter to untap it. So we're going to add infinite counters to our Necrotic Ooze. Now we can start untapping with the Devoted Druid activated ability and start removing counters from Necrotic Ooze after he's infinitely large and start making all of our creatures equally stupidly large. And now we go swinging for the win. Next up we have ETBs. Okay, Emil the Blessed and Dockside Extortionist. I think this one's probably the hardest one to pull off just because of Dockside Extortionist's requirement that your opponent controls 4 or more artifacts and enchantments. Okay, Emil will flicker a creature you control, then return to the battlefield for 3 generic mana. Dockside Extortionist will create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. So you can sack those treasures to flicker Dockside again and create infinite mana. So you would also get infinite enters the battlefield triggers, which is pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. All right, thank you all so much for coming out. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. I thought this would be a fun video to show you really quick how silly Double Masters 2022 is getting. Also, please don't forget MTG On Command down in the description below, 2% off. And then we also have our patrons, Gabby, Neebs, Cade, Austin, and now our newest member, Derek. Thank you all so much for supporting me on this journey. I love you guys. Couldn't do this without you. And everybody else that showed up. We're almost at 2,000 subs. Hey, can you believe that? It's fantastic. It's been like a year. Year and a month. Thank you all so much for coming out. Y'all have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Where's my button?